Good afternoon, members. We have already formed a quorum. It is also time to start. So I think it should be the last time that we talk about air pollution if nothing untoward happens. So before I actually get the administration to come in, I just want to check with you, that is, whether you have other issues to follow up in relation to air pollution. Dennis Kwok. Sorry, speaker is off mic. In relation to the EIA studies, I think the administration has been focusing on path models to talk about environmental pollution and how it comes by. We were given a briefing. I think we need a briefing to talk about the path model. I want to know whether it is going to happen or not. Well, two issues are happening in parallel. First of all, we have this subcommittee, and then we have a bills committee. It is also about the implementation of the new AQOs, and they will apply to the EIAO as well. So I just want to consult your views as to in which context we should follow this up. I also sit on that bills committee, but then it will focus on the bill itself. So in relation to the EIA studies, whether the path models should be used and as well as the content of the path models, I think probably that would be too technical. It would be rather difficult to take it up there. All right, at this juncture, maybe we invite the admin to join us. What about other members? Do you have other supplementary views concerning air pollution? Do you want to include more topics? If not, then I will just follow up on Dennis' concern. That is, we'll have one more meeting about the path model, and then we can move on and we can tackle noise pollution and light pollution. Welcome, Ms. Low, Mr. Peng, Mr. Lai. I think we are all familiar with each other, so I don't want to introduce the guest speakers one by one. Officials, we were saying that we are approaching the end of our discussion. In relation to air pollution, I checked with members as to what else should be discussed. A member talked about the path model. I think the Under-Secretary did say that perhaps we should take it up within the meetings of the Air Pollution Control Amendment Bill. I will take it up with the chair of the Bills Committee, Mr. Charles Mock. Yeah. Are you talking about having it discussed at the Bills Committee? It would be too difficult and not directly related. But then, Under-Secretary, our Secretariat has put on record that at a meeting held on the 12th of December, we said that we should look at the methodology of conducting EIAs as well as the calculation models. At that time, it was said that, sorry, that's not about the path model. For the bill concerning the AQOs, yes, you'll be interested to know more about it. You wanted to know how it would be related to the bill concerning the AQOs. However, to be frank, that would not be the right forum to talk about the path model itself. If you are interested, I just wondered if we should take it up at an EA panel meeting or at a meeting of this subcommittee, because we need to get experts in this field to explain the model. However, if you take it up within the Bills Committee meeting for the AQO, it would not be appropriate. I'm sorry if we didn't make ourselves clear and so you had it wrongly put on the record. It doesn't matter. If you think that it is better to have it discussed here, of course I'm fine. So I'll ask the Secretariat to liaise with the Bureau to find out when the Bureau can get the experts to brief us on the model. Mr. Dennis Kwok. What about item 3 on the checklist, review of the IAO? I think that's the occasion when we talk about the path model. I agree with the Undersecretary that it would not be quite right to look at the path model within the bill. I'm not quite sure how the minutes were made in relation to this point. All right, the point is clear. The Secretariat and the Bureau will come into contact over this point, and then let's deal with the paper concerning the cost-benefit analysis of the various measures taken to improve air quality. And then we will talk about the methodology of the IA, and then we'll move on to noise pollution and light pollution. In other words, the subcommittee has already covered 1/3 at least of our work. Okay, then we can come back to the paper for today. Sorry, Madam Chair, if I may clarify with you, there isn't much time left before the LegCo goes into summer recess. What would you like to discuss at the next meeting and two? Sorry, Undersecretary, things are beyond our control. It is not possible for us to name a date. As you know that between Monday and Friday, we will be spending a lot of time to deal with the business for the LegCo meeting. And we would like to mark certain days like in the 20th. We hope that we don't have to change the dates. Yesterday, we almost had the misunderstanding that this meeting was cancelled. Well, we were supposed to have a meeting on the 10th of May, and we're supposed to talk about noise pollution, aviation, and noise on bridges, as well as the noise pollution caused by logistics industry. I have asked the Secretariat to list out the items that we are interested in so that the Bureau will get ready. Can I put it in this way? That is, it is possible that the meeting to be held on the 10th of May has to be deferred. So whenever it may be, when we have our next meeting, we'll be talking about noise pollution. Maybe on the 10th of May, we'll be having special sound effects, that is the LegCo meeting. Now, in this case, we talk about paper CB bracket 1, X38, 12 to 13, bracket 01. I'd like to ask the Bureau to walk us through the paper. In particular, the tables attached to the paper. So please go into the details. Yes, I will start off with a few words, and then Mr. Lai will give you the details. The word on the background. Well, last time we analyzed the cost benefit, and I think it was in the year 2007 when there was a consultant's study on the air quality objectives. First of all, you may very well say that that's a long time ago. Second, the report also admitted that it was a very crude cost-benefit analysis. So it was quite general in nature. And between 2007 and now, within the administration, we haven't updated the cost-benefit analysis, and we haven't conducted a detailed cost-benefit analysis. Therefore, I am sorry that we are not able to provide you with something very up-to-date. I have to be frank with you. Second, as you know that all along we have been working with the experts in the universities to see how air pollution relates with health, and we want to get the economic data. We are still in liaison with the universities as to how we can carry out studies in the short term, medium term, and long term. We hope that before the summer recess, we can reach certain agreements with the universities as to how to take the work forward. I am very sorry that we are sort of presenting you with something which is already in existence. And the three of us here are not experts in cost-benefit analysis. Therefore, if we can't answer some of the questions that you put forward today, I must sort of apologize in advance. Mr. Lai, as the Undersecretary has said, for the information presented to you today, it is based on the consultant's review of our air quality objectives, and it was 5 years old. As pointed out in the paper, the consultant proposed 36 measures. The administration was advised to divide them into 3 stages or 3 phases. There are 19 in the first phase. They're more easily done, and it has a lot to do with improvements in the air quality. Now, for cost-benefit analysis, I must add a footnote here. The consultant has already indicated that it is crude. When it comes to the technical feasibility and the actual economic cost-benefit, we still have to do more work. Now, we have only been presented with some very crude analysis so as to indicate to the administration as to what measures will have a higher cost benefit, and then the government can take this as one of the factors to be considered when deciding on what to implement. All right, the floor is now open to members for questions. Mr. Jia Wai-chun.
Please hold your hands up. I know that you will all be very eager to ask questions if I say that there is no time limit. Wu Chi Wei, Kwok Wai Keung, anyone else? 7 minutes to start with. Mr. Tony Chair, just now it was mentioned about the cost effectiveness, that the last one was done some time ago, and there are already a number of them in place. First of all, in relation to this table, just now it was mentioned that that is not the only consideration. What else can it be used for then? When we look at the cost effectiveness, well, we see that some of them are below 1. Some of them are really low. So perhaps you do something and it may not be of much help to improve air quality. And of course, another factor to be taken into consideration is the money amount. I see that in phase 3, the cost benefit is quite low, much lower than 1. So does it mean that after a while, in order to do better, to have some improvements, the margin of effectiveness decreases? Have I made myself clear? Perhaps I will answer first to be supplemented by Mr. Lai. In relation to the 19 measures, you may recall that back in 2007, when the consultant compiled the report, they were looking at different measures. And actually, current government policies are more than these 19 measures. Say, for example, replacement of diesel vehicles and also control on emission from vessels. They are not among the 19 measures, but with rounds of discussions over the years, including exchanges with the electrical and experts. On a certain level, when we discuss cost effectiveness or cost benefit, we have reached a conclusion. Although the calculations are not exact, but we know that on road transport and vessels, if we can reduce emission, it will have a huge impact on public health. Currently, the calculations are quite crude. The experts would like to work out the data in greater detail in short, medium, and long term. So far, nothing of such has been done, not even in the academics, because they've always been waiting to cooperate with the administration. We would like to introduce a breakthrough so that we will have a clearer picture in the future. We've spent a lot of money. Of course, you will want to know whether it has indeed brought health benefits. That's why in the short and medium terms we cooperate with universities and education institutions to work out the details so that we can give an account to the public. But I'm afraid that this document is no longer very useful. So the 19 measures will still be implemented, although you said that you've done more than the 19 measures. And perhaps I will look at the 19 measures. Well, perhaps I suggest there are many new councillors or legislators. Perhaps, well, the undersecretary, before she became the undersecretary, she was already very familiar with it. But we do have a lot of new legislators. Perhaps may I ask the Secretariat to give us a once-over about the 19 measures, what has been implemented and what are more political than actual need. Can you maybe explain to us about the 19 measures? Sorry, Mr. Tse, I'll give you back your 3 minutes. I do believe that the explanation will come in useful. May I allow to give a brief report? If you refer to our paper, Annex E sets out 19 measures. They are the recommendations in the report in 2009, that if they want to achieve the target, these 19 measures will have to be in place. In 2010 January, last year in January 2012, the chief executive in his policy address said that they would incorporate new AQOs. So the number of measures has been increased to 22. And in this year's policy address, the chief executive emphasized on improving further our air quality, so there are new measures. So in relation to air quality improvement measures, it's an involvement and it expands to a wider and wider scope. Perhaps we will give you a progress report about what 22 measures we have put in place and what are the most updated situation. We roll out the measures. Of course, some of them are implemented faster than the others. Say, for example, out of the 19 measures, if you look at the cost-benefit analysis, the cost-benefit ratio, the last column, of course, if it is higher, that means it's of greater benefit and it should be implemented earlier. But as I said, apart from this, we need to take other factors into consideration, say, for example, impact on the trade, acceptability by the public, and also political considerations. Maybe I will quote 2 examples. Number 5, ultra-low sulfur diesel for local vessels. Last month, when we reported to the EA panel, we have already reached a consensus with the trade. We would like to reduce the 0.5% of sulfide content to 0.05%. So it brings a reduction of 90% in SO2. And with the new requirements, new fuel may be more expensive than the old ones by about just 1%. It brings a great reduction in emission. Well, for SO2, the emission is about 600 tons, with an additional cost of 1%. So we're all very happy in terms of social cost. The other example is phasing out old diesel vehicles, including trucks and buses. The cost effectiveness is quite high, 6. But if you look at NXE, the footnote, when a consultant calculates the cost, they assume the lifespan of they have an assumption of using the remaining lifespan of buses, not with a new fleet. In this year's policy address, the CE proposes a $10 billion replacement program to phase out old diesel vehicles. So the capital cost will be much higher because it's a different basis. This time round, the percentage of cost of new vehicles is calculated. That is 18 to 30%. So it's a marked difference with an old vehicle, the residual value of old vehicles. And when it comes to energy and the use of natural gas up 50%, we have reached a consensus with power companies. Starting from 2015, their mode of power generation will rely on half using natural gas and using less coal. But I do think that the prices for natural gas and coal have changed. And if we look at the cost, we have to look at the current situation. I actually would like the official to just go over them one by one. Perhaps I will say something, and if I've said anything wrong, please correct me. The second one, I think it's already be implemented. Actually, 2 and 3. In this year's policy address and budget, they are included in the $10 billion with the piece of legislation that are going to be introduced. This is in relation to heavy-duty vehicles that they will be phased out. 4. So what's happening about the hybrid vehicles? So it's no longer being considered. Please allow me. I can quickly go through them one by one about the current situation. And then I will take follow-up questions. Number 4. Why the use of hybrid electric vehicles? We're doing 2 things. First, we have got funding approval from the Finance Committee to subsidize public transport operators to buy 16 hybrid vehicles and about 30 electric vehicles. For 6 of the hybrid vehicles, deposit has been made. In relation to electric vehicles, tender exercise has started, and they will be put into operation in 2014 and 15. There is also a green transport fund to test out hybrid and electric vehicles. There are 44 applications approving about 70 vehicles. I've already gone through number 5. 6 is the selective catalytic reduction. Mr. Pang. About this device. It is rather technical and is quite new. We've made an estimation for local vessels. The temperature of emission is on the low side, so it is not very feasible. So what we are planning to do is that for government fleet, government vessels, engines will be changed or replaced with the same effectiveness to replace the addition of selective catalytic reduction devices. Number 7, about the airport authority. In relation to the ground support equipment, they have already drafted the electrification program. In the coming few years, they will, as far as possible, have a full electrification of their equipment. 8. Emission control for off-road vehicles. This is in relation to container terminals or construction site and the use of diesel equipment and machines. We've discussed the control method with the trade. This is to control the use for machines sold in Hong Kong or bought in Hong Kong. They have to meet the international standard. We're working on the draft of the legislation for electrical to consider at the end of the year. 9. VOC. Mr. Pang. In 2009, legislation is enacted to control the use of paint, sealant, the VOC emission control. And in 2010, the measures have been put in place. So this is actually completed. Thank you. And then I'll go to the next item, 10, low emission zones. In Mongkok Central and Causeway Bay, there are 3 low emission zones established. We've reached an agreement with a franchise bus company. Starting from 2015, only Euro 4 buses can enter these zones. This is being followed up with the Transport Department and franchise bus companies. 11, pedestrian ski zones. Our understanding is that as far as possible, they will discuss with the relevant district councils. It is not as easy as it seems to be. Now 12 is the bus route regionalization. I know that is being done. 13, expand rail network is being done. Sha-Tin Central Line is one of them. Work started. 14, cycling network. We know that the CEDD has already formulated a plan to set up a circular cycle and track in the new territories. Work has already started.
The 15th, that's about the building energy code. I'm not responsible for this area, but I know that the new ordinance came into effect last year for lifts and escalators and lighting in the public areas are now subject to the energy efficiency regulation. I just want to remind members that it doesn't cover light pollution. Energy efficiency standards for 4 domestic electrical appliances, we have already got the labels. 17, LED or equivalent alternatives for traffic signal and street lighting. I think the TD and the Highways Department are already doing this. The 18th, tree planting and rooftop greening. We are taking this forward together with the Development Bureau. District cooling system for high-tech development. I think in the middle of last year, we reported to the LegCo. We are going to approach the LegCo for money for the installation. Yes, in the near future, we will be approaching the PWSC for money. I think the advanced works have already been given funding. Other than the 19 here, you have 3 additional measures, right? LPG taxis and minibuses. We have already got funding from the LegCo, $150 million for 21,000 taxis and minibuses, so as to improve upon the pollutants of nitrogen oxides by replacing the nozzles. So we hope that we can replace that item. And then the OGV, onshore power supply. In the policy address, the C has already said that we would like to legislate for it. We hope that when you come back from the summer recess, we can introduce the bill to you. +2. We find it really amazing. If you can't remember the last one, supplement the information to us after the meeting. I just hope that we were given the background and have the gap filled by just getting the briefing a moment ago. If money can solve the problem, it's easier to get the money. But then for other things like bus route rationalization, it is not easy to even cut a single route, the district councils. As to the 22nd one, cooperation with the Guangdong province to see how the OGVs in the Pearl River Delta region will be subject to a regulatory regime, so that all the OGVs coming to the Pearl River Delta region will have to move on to a fuel switch. The onshore power supply is not included. Well, it's even that's the latest one, Mr. Chair. I think almost all the questions have been answered. There's one more point I want to clarify. For this cost-benefit analysis, it was done quite some time ago. What about additional ones? Are you going to do it as well? Yes, we hope that we can be having analysis which is more in-depth, and we hope to update it more frequently. We are now working with the universities as to how to take it forward. It takes time because some of them are quite technical, and we have to find out which ones should go to which university and which ones should be given to consultants. We hope that after the summer holiday, we can come back to report to you about the partnership programs. Of course, what is meant by short-term, what is meant by medium-term and long-term studies or measures. Well, we hope that we can implement all of them within the current term government. And then, in the future, we can always give you an answer when you are interested in the cost-benefit analysis. Madam Chair, I don't have other follow-up questions. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chairman, in fact, you took words out of my mouth. You asked my question. I wanted to know about the work underway and whether they have examined the effectiveness of the measures. There are 22 measures in the table. Some of them have not yet been completed. So I want to know, as so many of them haven't been completed, so many of them have not been completed or implemented, so does it mean that our air quality hasn't improved? Last time I said that I saw some improvement, but can you compare the present air quality with that 5 years ago? We are going to scrutinize a new bill covering the new AQOs. I'm sure that would bring us to phases 2 and 3. With the tighter AQOs, phase 1 hasn't been completed, so what about phases 2 and 3? Are you going to press ahead? Do you have a timetable? The greatest efforts on our part have been injected into the first phase. For Annex E, some of them have a high BC ratio. They are the end-of-pipe solutions. They really work. But then for other measures, you see that the BC ratio is smaller. Not that we won't embark on them, but in fact, whenever the opportunities present themselves, we'll work on all the 22 of them. Now, you were saying that we haven't finished with the measures in Annex E, and you want to know what's the way forward. Now, the consultant's report told us that the government should do such measures. Even yes, the administration would do this, but then we won't be doing all of them at the same time. Now, in relation to the replacement of diesel vehicles, it is only this year that we have a mechanism and we have a high-level support to do it on such a massive scale. And then, if you turn to the next page, we have the ERP. Many people find it a popular idea. It is not for this Environment Bureau to make the decision single-handedly. It has been on the drawing board for over 20 years. It won't just help with air quality. Now, for the end-of-pipe solutions, it has a direct bearing on emission. For other measures, the motivation doesn't actually rest in emission control. In fact, some measures would have more benefits than merely emission control. So sometimes it may not be be focusing on air pollution only. So sometimes you try to see if we would be doing other measures as well. But for those other topics, we have to partner with other bureaus. So they have more to do with improving the livability of Hong Kong as a city. Madam Chair, yes, I understand this point. I think this is the reason why the policies of the Environment Bureau could not leave the East Wing. I'm not asking you to step others back, but for the end-of-pipe solutions, you are in direct control. Probably you have already done that. So what's outstanding would probably be those involving other departments and bureaus as well. So can you not sort them out and try to secure the initial views of the other bureaus, and then in this way we can work via other channels, and then we don't have to press you at this forum. I believe it will be very difficult for the Environment Bureau to tell us what other bureaus think. Maybe the Secretariat can name the other policy bureaus for you. Probably the other policy bureaus have other views, different views, and that's why a particular measure cannot be delivered. Probably it is not yet mature. I think the government would wait for it to be agreed upon internally before introducing it to the community. it is not just policy bureaus that might have different views. In fact, the district councils will also have a role to play. And there must be better cooperation between the LegCo and the district councils. Now, for bus route rationalization, maybe the purpose is to reduce costs, but it is causing a lot of feedback. If we go to Annex F, Madam Chair, for items 35 and 36, now that's about the use of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Well, the consultant has included this item, but even as of now, we know that it isn't yet a mature idea, so you don't need to take too rigid a view of this table, thinking that all the suggestions from the consultant have to be implemented. Now, the 36th item, cross-boundary goods. Now, I think the consultant was saying that for the transport of cross-boundary goods, using the rail rather than goods vehicles would greatly reduce the emission. I think if you want to introduce such a policy, we won't be the only policy bureau involved. This paper was based on the information generated in year 2007. We will soon be getting the new AQOs. The tables here were part of the consultation document for the first exercise on the AQOs. Are you going to have another consultation document so as to seek the views of the public? Just now we talked about 20 plus measures. We hope that in due course we can give you a report. Say, for example, in 2 years' time, we'll see the effects of replacing the catalytic converters for the taxis, and it will greatly improve the quality.
And we are prepared to take measurements to tell you that after this introduced, emission has been reduced, and this is the cost benefit. Mr. Kwok Wai Kau. Thank you. Annex F. There are two tables, and it's a very clear comparison. There is a common point here before the measures are in place in terms of the overall emission from transport. Say sea transport. The emission volume accounts for the majority of the total, over half. And this excludes ocean-going vessels. This is just about local vessels. So if you include ocean-going vessels, I believe the percentage will be, the figure will be a lot higher. Does this show that if we focus our effort on sea transport, in particular ocean-going vessels and those using heavy oils, then we will be able to meet the objectives? It seems that the administration is putting a lot of effort on tackling road transport. But if you look at the emission volume, yes, there is some that is contributed by road transport, but not as high as sea transport. And I've received a lot of views from groups in relation to the $10 billion fund to replace diesel vehicles. For those using Euro 3, Euro 4, of course, the emission level is lower than Euro 1 and Euro 2, but they get more subsidy than Euro 1 and 2. Then why don't you focus your resources on the replacement of Euro 1 and Euro 2 instead of using it on replacement of Euro 3 and 4 vehicles. Why can't it be more focused? Now, resources are diverted to the wrong place. Green groups share this view. I have some questions now. The annex. The same two tables in Annex F, the one above. It shows the difference with 2 and the difference between 1. And the bottom one is that phase 2 with phases 2 and 3 in place. Why are the figures higher in the table above? Is it because the figures have been put in the wrong place? Because when all phases are in place, I believe the figure will be lower than phase 1 only. But when all 3 phases are in place, in relation to sea transport for SO2 is 3,300, NOx is 18,000, etc., etc. With just 1 and 2, why is the figure lower? For SO2 is 2,000, NOx is 13,000. Does it mean that phase 3 is useless? What are the changes? Mr. Lai. Well, let me first respond to Mr. Kwok's question. Phase 3. If you refer to Annex F, Phase 3, that is 31 to 36. They don't involve measures related to vessels. So emission reduction on sea transport will not be reflected in Phase 3, but just Phases 1 and 2. Mr. Kwok mentions about 2 points, 2 observations. Emissions and its impact from vessels. Every year the EPD will compile a list of emissions, looking at major pollutants and their sources and the emission level. This is to facilitate understanding by us and the EPD to find out the root of the problem and to, in a focused way, put in place measures to tackle the problem. For 2011, there are 3 major pollutants sources: road traffic, vessels, and power plant. For SO2 2011, 52% of them comes from vessels. And when it comes to RSP and also NOx, is 1/3. That's why in the policy address, focused measures are put in place to tackle ocean-going vessels because we would like to reduce the level. But we don't just tackle the level. We also have to address public health risks. And this is related to road traffic, because road traffic is closer at home than vessels. That's why we have to, in a focused way, tackle taxis, buses, and diesel vehicles. This is a 2-pronged approach. So there are 3 major sources of pollution in Hong Kong: power plant, sea transport, and road transport. And the other observation of Mr. Kwok. Last week, there was a green group which queried whether the replacement program of the administration is an effective way to use resources. We need to abide by 2 principles when we put in place a program. First, polluter pays. The second principle, use of public funds has to be proper. It has to go where is needed. Some green groups may think that when it comes to emission level, older vehicles are more polluting. hence a higher emission level. But does it mean that the administration has to spend more money on polluting vehicles to phase them out? Under the principle of polluter pays, we don't want to encourage people to pollute, because it seems that you have to pay them off if you are polluting the air. The second consideration is that when we put in place the $10 billion fund to phase out diesel vehicles, we don't directly link the model with the emission level. We pack it with the age of the vehicle. For diesel vehicles, there are 5 age groups. If they're over 18 years old, 18%. Less than 10 is rather newer, and the commercial and the economic value is higher, so a maximum 30%. For car owners or vehicle owners, they are encouraged to replace their vehicles earlier. For Euro 3, they may be 10 years old or lower. So if they have that replaced, we offer them 30%. But if they wait till the deadline 2019, at that time the vehicle is about 15 to 16 years old, they will get a lower percentage. This is an incentive, and at the same time flexibility for vehicle owners to get a higher amount. But if the older the vehicle it is, then the more we give, then vehicle owners will wait till the last minute. But this year we see a comparison, a difference. You use resources to replace less polluting vehicles, younger vehicles. Perhaps older and newer vehicles would like to see a replacement, and the general public would like to replace older vehicles first. But it seems that the subsidy for replacement of a newer car or vehicle is higher, because you take into account the residual value. But your target is environmental protection, so the more polluting it is, the more resources you need to give it. You say that you take into consideration residual value. That's why newer vehicles will get a higher amount. It seems that you've get the priority wrong and you cannot achieve your goal. Mr. Lai, I understand where Mr. Kwok come from. Under our proposals for Euro or pre-Euro 3 models, diesel vehicles, they have to be phased out. I agree with Mr. Kwok. The older the vehicle, the earlier it has to be phased out. So we have 3 deadlines: pre-Euro, pre-Euro 1 before 2016, and pre-Euro 3 2019. They will not get a license renewed after that year. So older vehicles, more polluting vehicles, they should be phased out as soon as possible. But when it comes to setting the compensation level, we have to take into account the market value and residual value. Say, for example, if we say that you get more for older vehicles, then there will be another problem. Newer vehicles, say 12 years old, pre-Euro, 20 years old, and it may break down any time, and I give them 30%, and instead for 10-year-old car I give 10%. Is it fair? Will it be accepted? I believe we all fully understand that you want to encourage people to replace their car, but your program is to force people to replace their car. You set a deadline, and if you don't follow the deadline, I will give you less in compensation. This is not an encouragement. I believe that we have talked with you about this, and we believe that we have a very firm ground to stand on. And it is just different means to the same end. Well, for old cars, legislation; new cars, financial incentive, but in the end they will all be replaced. It's just a difference in means. All the different means to the same end. Ms. Elizabeth Kwok. A follow-up on the previous question. I've spoken with the administration before, and I'd like to say once again here that if they are to be implemented, they have to take into consideration the livelihood of half of the 40,000 vehicle the drivers. Maybe in the end you have the money sitting there, people will still drive their old cars. Setting up of a low emission zone. It was said that it would be rolled out on a pilot basis in a number of districts. In Chiangkwano, Wanpo Road, can it be one of the low emission zones? I see that there are some difficulties, but I'd like to follow up on this. The Wanpo Road and the air pollution problem, how are you going to address it? Would that be another measure? And in relation to 14 cycling network, it was mentioned that there is a design of a cycling track going around new territories. But the current design for cycling tracks are for leisure use only, not to replace mode of transport, not to be used as a mode of transport. But what is the view of the administration on bicycle? Will they facilitate the use of bicycles as a mode of transport, or is it going to remain as a leisure recreational use only at the weekend? If that is the case, if the latter is the case, what contribution can bicycles make? And if it is to be developed into one of the modes of transport, I don't see how the current plan can realize that. Please give me some answer. What is on your mind? 17. LED for traffic signal. Well, it was mentioned that it's already in use for street lighting, and for other cities, for street lights, they're already using LEDs. But what about Hong Kong? Is the technology mature enough?
I'll try to answer the first question. In the case of Chiangkwano, we are watching the development. We try to resolve the problem, but today is not the best time to deal with it. But in the future, I'm sure we will have more opportunities to discuss with you. Yes, when we talk about the landfill, I hope Ms. Kwok can bear with me today. I don't want to talk too much about that point. The second one is about the cycle track. I think the cycling network was discussed last time. To be frank, if you ask what the Environment Bureau can do, we greatly promote the idea, like the pedestrianization schemes. However, if we want to make it successful, we need the work of other bureaus. I think last time when we had a meeting, we had already told the chair of this point. I really hope that the bureaus will coordinate among themselves before coming to us. So was there an internal discussion as to the positioning of bicycles? We did have a discussion, and therefore it was included in the air quality management or the clean air plan. Well, this morning when we had the filibustering, you know that for the Executive Council, members had to keep confidentiality, and that's all that they can divulge to us. Well, we have the clean air plan for Hong Kong, and if you want to read more carefully, then you can find ways as to how we can apply the ideas. For others, over which we haven't got any commitments, I'm afraid I can't say much. So, when do you expect to come to the LegCo concerning the case of Wanpo Road in Chiangkwano? Very soon. Second quarter or third quarter. Very soon. I think characteristic of a EXCO member. All right, let's wait for that opportunity. LED street lighting, Mr. Lai. I think the Highways Department has already carried out a pilot scheme in certain areas to check the effectiveness of LED street lighting. The HA is also testing the effectiveness of LED lighting. So if it is proved to be successful, it is going to help substantially. We have the BC ratio here, and does it mean that all the traffic signals, all the street lights have been replaced and then you have this benefit? What do you mean? Certainly we include traffic signals. If all of them are LED signals, then you will understand the benefit, the amount of benefit. But as you can tell, it consumes little power, so the BC ratio is low. Does it include street lighting? It's being tested. I think you do include street lighting. No. What about including it as the 38th or the 39th measure? Because for SO2 and NOx is 3 and 5 in terms of the emission reduction potential. Well, they are of a low wattage, so the impact on emission will be low. It's better than nothing. So if you intend to do this, please include it, and please also give us some figures to illustrate your point. All right. For the 19 measures, as to which of them are already being undertaken, we can report to you on the latest position. And then we have also 20 plus measures that are being carried out that can be included in the report as well. Madam Chair, I want to talk about the idea of a green data center. No department has told me about the electricity consumption as well as the carbon emission of our data centers. I hope there will be more information and more discussion in this regard. Thank you. I want to ask a question in the first round, and that's about the vessels. For the 30 plus measures, it shows that emission from vessels is serious in terms of the problem. I wasn't a member of the Economic Development Panel, but I joined the tour to the cruise terminal. We didn't have cruise liners berthed in Victoria Harbour. Now there will be 2 or 3 being berthed at Kai Tak Terminal. I understand that they have already reserved space for the switch of the fuel at berth. But I think the fuel switch at berth is being suspended because they have to deal with the question of compatibility. I thought, wouldn't it be the same like when we go overseas, we have the travelers plugs so that you either switch to 110 or 220 watts. Now, if we have 2 or 3 cruise liners berthed there, at most they can only use the low sulfur diesel. Then it will give rise to a lot of emissions. And where will it go? We have easterly winds or southeasterly winds, so Kowloon Central will be getting all the emissions. So how can we be sure that they will be using low sulfur diesel? In this way, we can reduce the emission and the amount of pollutants. Are there other ways to expedite the fuel switch. Otherwise, it is like the ocean version or the marine version of roadside pollution. So I hope that it won't go all the way to Kowloon Central. As you know that for Kowloon Central, it is a crowded area and it has a lot of traffic. So if you have emissions coming from the ocean-going vessels, then public health would be jeopardized. So I just wonder if the Bureau has got any solutions. In a moment, my colleagues will supplement, but allow me to give you the perspective. Currently, we have already got a large number of vessels berthed in our harbour, and they are already emitting the pollutants, and that is in Kwai Chung. For the fuel switch at berth, I think that's the most effective one in the short term to greatly reduce the emissions. For the new cruise terminal, I don't think we are expecting too many vessels on a yearly basis. We are already talking to the shipping companies to understand more about the possibility of having a fuel switch. Now, using electricity while at berth, I think it is something else. I think both on the mainland and in overseas countries, we try to understand how they operate. We can't be impatient. We are carrying out a survey, and we find that the MSD is already undertaking studies. That is, if we want to do it for the cruise terminal, what measures we need, what facilities we need. We have to wait for the outcome of the study. Then, we have to go through the electrical process as well. So please bear with us. So all the procedures are already there, and we are currently seeking legal advice, and we are preparing for the legislative work. We're not sure whether we can come back in time before you go into summer recess. And the Ye panel has a lot on the agenda. We've already talked to the cruise companies. We can give the drafting instructions to the DOJ. We did promise the Ye panel that we can brief you before we make the announcements. Mr. Lai, as Undersecretary has said, for the mandatory fuel switch at berth, we are now consulting the industry. I think the mainstream idea is one of support, but then some of them have unique operational requirements, so they will be interested to know whether the exceptional circumstances can be catered for when we draft the bill. As the Undersecretary has said, we would like to come back in July and tell you about the initial outcome of the consultation with the industry. We'll check with you. If we have the support of LegCo, then we can start our work with the law draftsman. And then towards the end of this year, beginning next year, we can present the bill to you. So that's the initial timetable. It will be difficult for us to control the timetable during the next week or two, but probably things will be sorted out in 3 weeks' time. So if you come in July, I'm sure we will be willing to have a special meeting to listen to you, so that in summer you can work on it, and then we don't have to wait 2 or 3 months' time when we go into recess. But certainly I will be worried. Before you use electricity, 0.05 and 0.25% would be different, and there would be more pollutants going to Kowloon Central. So for Kowloon Central, you may have to supplement by being tighter on idle engines. And the bus route rationalization should also be given emphasis and priority in the Kowloon Central region. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, it's not about Kowloon Central. I want to talk about Kowloon East for Wong Tai Sin and Kwun Tong, and then of course increasing the toll for Cross Harbour Tunnel and decreasing it for Eastern Harbour Crossing. There will be impact on the traffic volume. So we need to take everything into account. Well, using electricity while at birth will take time. But then the way you describe it seems that you're only working on a study and it will be some time before you can implement it. So the cruise terminal hopefully should be more and more popular, so it will be used by more and more vessels. So please give priority to the onshore power and replacement of the diesel vehicles. Why is it that the subsidy given to older vehicles is smaller? I hope the Bureau can study one point. I think I can understand your basic concepts, but what about the health risk? It is very high. We are going to spend $10 billion exactly because of this, as it is right next to us and we must tackle the problem. Now, I hope that the Bureau can consider one additional factor. What is meant by what's the Chinese version of early bird? That is, give extra incentives to the early birds if they have replaced the vehicles earlier. In this way, you can adjust your policies because your policy is such that you don't decide on the size of the subsidy on the amount of pollutants. Of course, we have the principle of the polluter pays, but then for the society as a whole, you should encourage the early birds. They should be given an extra incentive. I think such a concept would result in a solution. So please try to see whether it would work.
And in relation to replacement of diesel vehicles, the carrot and stick approach should go in tandem. Otherwise, the problem will be thorny. Low emission zones. Set down a timetable by which vehicles by a certain time will not have their license renewed. If we can speed up our efforts, consolidate them, when you have reaped the benefits, you have to at the same time tell the public what the benefits are. Well, whether it is low emission zones, whether it is a restriction on the age of vehicles, apart from legislation and the subsidies, are they going to go in tandem? Maybe I will answer first, and then I will defer to Mr. Lai. Onshore power. Do not forget that it comprises two parts. First, when you are birthed, there needs to be onshore power facilities for you to tap into the source, and at the same time you need to have the facilities on board the vessel to use it. But technologies in this regard is not developing very quickly. And if vessel companies do not have such installations on their vessels, then there is no use to ask them to use onshore power when there is no facilities on board. Yes, I'm aware of that. But when it comes to a fuel switch at berth, apart from relying on a voluntary apart from relying on the vessels to do it voluntarily, I know that the situation is quite dire in Kwai Chung. But when it comes to Central Kowloon, it wasn't there before, but now there will be an additional risk to public health. Of course, people are concerned. There are ways for you to get a cruises berthing there to use low sulfur fuel. At least there is a reduction. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang. Diesel vehicle. When it comes to highly polluting diesel vehicles, through control and subsidy, we address the issue. If we get a consensus with the trade and the LegCo, we will introduce a bill setting out that by a certain year, pre-Euro 3, diesel vehicles will not have their license renewed. After the bill's endorsed, we will also give the proposal of ex gratia payment to the LegCo for vetting. When it comes to low emission zones, as it was explained, through an agreement with franchise bus companies, this will be implemented. Starting from this moment onwards, well, actually 2 years ago, bus companies have started deploying low-emission buses into these zones. We're talking about 80% or so. But what we require is that by 2015, 100% of the buses in these zones will have to be at least Euro 4. Let me remind you that we had a meeting on the 13th. We're scheduled to have a meeting on the 13th of May about replacement of vehicles, but I'm afraid that we may not be able to have that meeting. There is a backup date, the 20th of May, 8:30 in the morning. But we will wait and see whether we can have that meeting on the 20th. This is out of our control. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang. I'd like to make a second point about power generation. It says that under phase 3, in order to reduce emission, there is a proposal to increase the ratio of natural gas, ideally to 100%, if not 50% of natural gas and the rest are nuclear power. Personally, I object to the use of nuclear power. It may be cheap, but of course, there are safety concerns. Even if it is not, the safety of nuclear power plant is the safety of storage. I hope the administration will take them into account. Since there is no perfect solution, has the administration considered doing other works to reduce emission? The major and most direct way is to reduce energy consumption. Currently, the thinking is to increase the cost for power generation for high energy consumption. So in this regard, does the administration have any measures in place when it comes to reducing energy consumption for domestic households and commercial users? In the ED panel, we have discussed a similar issue. Of course, these issues will have to be discussed in detail. We will have an energy policy, and also public consultation on fuel mix. After the holiday, it will start. These are major issues involving other issues. So when it comes to fuel mix, we will consult the public on the supply side, and on the demand side we will work on energy conservation, and we will start from buildings. And I'm not going to go into details because these are major policies. In the right time, in the near future, there will be opportunities for us to have a detailed discussion and exchange with members. The Undersecretary said that there will be other opportunities, so I don't have any more to say. I'm very happy to hear from Mr. Kwok that he objects to the use of nuclear power, because there will be one more member from the FTU who object to the use of nuclear power. So we are one step closer to success, perhaps. This is not something that the Policy Bureau would like to hear. But when it comes to these measures, anything to add? If not, on the next occasion, well, I will discuss with the Policy Bureau to talk about whether we should first discuss noise pollution, or to follow up on the methodology of the EIA. And the methodology of EIA, we will need the Policy Bureau to get us the experts. Perhaps we will first address the administrative measures, public expenditure and mitigation measures of noise pollution, and then you make arrangements for experts to come to speak to us on methodology of EIA, and then we'll have a meeting on that. Thank you for attending.